Before we begin, I want to share a resource that can make your divorce process far easier and much less stressful. It's Hello Divorce. Hello Divorce gives you a guided, step-by-step path through your divorce with clear instructions, simple online tools, and support from real legal and coaching professionals when you need it. You get help with paperwork, access to affordable legal advice, and a process that is designed to save you money, reduce conflict, and keep you informed every step of the way. They've created a special page just for Divorce and Beyond listeners. Visit hellodivorce.com/Susan to explore their plans, pricing, and resources so you can see exactly what fits your situation. If you want a clearer, calmer, more empowered way to move through your divorce, start at hellodivorce.com/Susan.
Hello, and welcome to the Divorce and Beyond podcast. I'm Susan Guthrie, your host. As a top divorce attorney and family law mediator for 30 years, I know what you need to know to get through your divorce, and most importantly, how to move beyond it to thrive and transition to your new future. My experts and I are here to give you the insider view into the process, so listen in for the wisdom and expert information you need on your journey through divorce and beyond.
Welcome back to Divorce and Beyond. I'm Susan Guthrie, your host, and I'm so glad you're all here. I would especially like to welcome the many new listeners who have found Divorce and Beyond since my recent appearance on the Oprah podcast. Welcome. I am so pleased that you are here. Divorce and Beyond is the podcast that I created 6 years ago to share the insights of my decades in divorce practice and that of the amazing experts I've been lucky enough to meet along the way. So know that we are focused on supporting you through your divorce journey and into your beyond. Because remember, even though divorce feels like forever, it really is a finite period of time in your life, and your beyond is where your future begins. Our goal with this podcast is to get you there and help you thrive in that beyond. So let's jump into today's podcast. Today, I want to explore a topic that so many listeners over the years have written into me about with questions and concerns. And so I figure let's jump on this topic and do a deep dive. And that is how to hire, and in some cases, fire their attorney. And I have seen this issue derail cases. I've seen it drain people's bank accounts. And I've seen it honestly break the spirit of even some of the strongest people who are going through divorce, but perhaps with the wrong advocate, with the wrong attorney in place. And that issue is really at the basis of some confusion, perhaps, about the attorney-client relationship. I hear from listeners every week, honestly, I don't know if my attorney is the right one. Or I hear things like, I feel dismissed, but I'm months into my case and I'm scared to make a change. Or here's a super common one. I hired someone in a panic and now I don't know how to fix it, meaning they know they probably made a mistake, but they really don't know how to fix it by the time they wake up and realize that the hiring was a mistake. So first off, just realize from what I just said there and from what all of the people who are perhaps in the same place that you are today have said to me over the years here is that you are not alone and that this is not uncommon. Not everybody knocks it out of the park the first time they hire someone. And that's not uncommon. Think about all the other people that you hire in your life, and sometimes it's not always the right match. So today I will pull back that curtain. I'm going to teach you, one, how to hire the right attorney, how you can recognize when that relationship is not working, how to make a clean and professional transition if needed, and how to build real trust with your lawyer, the one who will ultimately help you move forward. Because when you understand this, everything else in your divorce becomes clearer. Your decisions will get stronger, your communication will improve, your personal confidence will increase, and conversely, your stress will decrease. And you will walk through the process with far more stability. All right, so I have seen this happen. And let me just say from the outset here, I have been fired, and I do not take that as an insult or even a statement that I did something wrong. What I look at that is a client recognizing that I was not the right fit for them. And they were exercising the appropriate authority and care over their own case to make that decision. I have also been the attorney that has had the file brought to me. This has happened much more often than being fired for whatever reason, but much more often I've been the second attorney, or even in other cases, I was the third attorney. Rarely would I be the fourth attorney or beyond, and I'll explain that in this episode why. But I want you to understand that this is not something that is uncommon. It is something that you need to consider and think about. But let's talk about this first off as to why choosing the right attorney can be so difficult. Here's the first issue, and probably the main one. No one chooses a divorce attorney from a calm and steady place, right? You are in a place where you are dealing with fear, grief, anger, often shock, right? Often shock. You want answers immediately. You want control. You want someone to protect you, and you want someone immediately who knows what to do. It feels really urgent in the beginning. And that urgency leads many people to hire the first attorney that they meet or the one recommended by a friend without considering whether that attorney's approach matches your goals, your values, or your communication style. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with you if you made that choice, right? It feels very urgent in the beginning, and in some cases, there may be some urgency. And the system is confusing. There's no real guidance out there on how to choose the right attorney. And honestly, the stakes feel enormous at the beginning because it's such an unknown. No one's handing you a guidebook. That's what I'm going to do here today. So the first thing that I'll say at the beginning of your divorce, and I've said this in other episodes, but let me just restate it here because it's directly applicable to the hiring of an attorney. Sorry, my voice cracked. Because it's directly applicable to the hiring of an attorney. I want you to consider hiring a good divorce coach before you hire your attorney, because this is one of the most effective steps that people overlook. A skilled divorce coach helps you to do the following. They help you clarify what kind of divorce process you want. I'll just mention some of them. There's litigation, there's negotiation, there's collaborative divorce, there's mediation. There's all kinds of different approaches. You don't need to know what they are in this episode. In fact, in the archive of episodes, we have many episodes on all of those. But one of the people or the person who's likely to be able to help you in the beginning talk about the pros and cons of all those different approaches is the divorce coach. And the type of attorney that you want depends on the type of approach that you want to take, the process that you want to follow. The other thing that a good divorce coach will help you do is identify your priorities before you talk to any lawyer so that when you go talk to the lawyer, you know what those priorities are. What, is financial security one of your priorities? Is the well-being of your children one of your priorities? Those are high-level priorities, but your divorce coach can actually help you drill down a bit on those so that you can have intelligent questions for your attorney when you are consulting with them. And that's another step they'll help you prepare for. They are going to help prepare you emotionally and practically for those consultations with the divorce attorneys. So you don't just go in and listen to the divorce attorney. You are participatory and ask smarter and more strategic questions as you are deciding who to hire. This is a really important decision. There's a lot of pressure on you in this moment to make that decision, and you want to avoid choosing an attorney out of fear or panic. And you want to do it from a place of having the best possible understanding of how that particular attorney that you are consulting with is going to represent you, right? So when people hire a lawyer from an emotional place, they often hire someone who matches the emotion of that moment. Someone who is the counterpoint to perhaps the fear or the anger that they are feeling in that moment. The earlier you are in the divorce process, fear and anger are the two things that most people are feeling in that moment. So when you hire someone who matches the opposite of that, the fear or the anger, it may not be the person that also identifies with all of the other priorities that you and strategies that you need. So you want to hire someone who doesn't match the emotion, they match your goal. And the coach is going to help you hire from clarity, not crisis, right? And I have seen this over and over again. This is the most common example that I've seen. So when I have been hired as the second attorney, very often what has happened is somebody has been blindsided with a divorce request from their spouse. And it could be something they found the spouse is cheating. They found the spouse has done something financially reprehensible. There's all kinds of things, but they come in to a divorce attorney's office and they are angry, right? Anger is very normal to feel when you are feeling blindsided and that someone has betrayed your trust and all that. So anger attracts a divorce attorney that is I'll call it the barracuda or the bulldog or the I'm going to fight for you and get you what you deserve. We're going to make them pay, right? That feels very necessary in that moment. Unfortunately, what we actually know happens when you come at someone super aggressively is they will counter with even more aggression. And what started out at one level of conflict will quickly escalate into higher and higher levels of conflict, which will only make your divorce last longer, cost more, and be more devastating for your entire family. And it flows from the approach that attorney will take. They will file everything. They will be very aggressive and very coercive in the motions that are filed and the requests that are made. Now, I'm not saying that's not sometimes the right approach, but often it is not the best first approach. So that is the best example I can give you of people who in that emotional moment rush out and hire, the gloves on attorney, the one who's going to duke it out with your ex and get you what you deserve. That is the one who gets fired most often. That's the attorney who gets fired most often when the client down the road starts to realize that that's just costing them a lot of money without a lot of positive outcome from all that aggression. And in the end, they realize that attorney has to go and they need to hire another one. So how do you hire the right attorney in the first place? This would be the best case scenario. So if you are at the beginning of your divorce or you're thinking about getting a divorce or you're thinking divorce might be in your future, these are the points for you. Once you're grounded right? So that's the divorce coach. I'm going to say it again. Once you're grounded, once you've had some time to process your emotional content and get yourself grounded, the hiring process should look like this. First, know your goals. I want you to sit down and ask yourself, and this is work you can do with your coach if you have one. If not, I want you to work on this. Ask yourself, do I want a settlement-focused process? Right? Do I want to come to an agreement ultimately with my ex so that we can settle this divorce and move it forward with our life? I will tell you, more than 95% of divorces settle with an agreement. So if you are agreeing to settle or you want a settlement-focused process, you are by far and away with the majority. Only the tiniest percentage of cases actually go to litigation, go to trial, go to hearings. So I want you to think about that. If settlement focus is part of your process, then you want to be thinking about an attorney who knows how to negotiate a settlement, right? All right. Are you concerned about safety or control? And this is a very serious question. I want you to think about that. Are you worried about safety or control? That is going to guide some of the potential attorneys that will serve you best. I want you to sit down and think about what matters most for your children. And don't do this from a place of anger. Don't do this from a place of, their other parent has done something to hurt you. Do it from what matters most for your children. And then what financial stability do you need to protect? Right? And if you don't know that, that's also an answer for you. But that's also an answer for you on what type of attorney and perhaps what other team members you need. Spoiler alert, you may need a CDF, a certified divorce financial analyst. But understand, do I want a settlement-focused process? Am I concerned about safety or control? What matters most for my children? And what financial stability do I need to protect? Because the answers will determine the kind of lawyer who will serve you best. So you have those goals in your mind, written down, even better than in your mind, right? Then you're going to interview more than one attorney. Cannot emphasize how important this is. I will tell you, every single person who ever came in to do a consultation with me, if I was the first attorney that they were meeting with, I always told them, even when they said, yep, you're it, Susan, I want to hire you now, I always said, please go and interview at least 2 more attorneys. I think 3 is really important because it gives you contrast. You're going to notice differences in how they communicate, what their listening skills are, and their approach. Right? So that's really important. Even if you totally vibe with the first attorney you go talk to, promise me right now, pinky promise, I'm holding up my pinky, guys. I want you to go out and talk to 2 more attorneys. When you're doing that, look for alignment. Look for alignment because here's an insider tip. A good attorney listens carefully to you. So many people, and this happens especially when you're not ready for the consultation, many people will go into the consultation and just sit there and be flooded with information from the attorney. And that's great. That's part of an attorney's job, is to educate clients. But an attorney who only speaks and who does not listen, and especially who not listen carefully, may not be the right attorney for you. They will also, if they're the right attorney for you, ask thoughtful questions. I have always said good mediators, good attorneys are endlessly curious. They want to know more. They want to understand. They want to dive beneath just the initial statement of facts or the initial statement of position that you give. They will ask you thoughtful questions. And I mentioned that they will educate you. That is very important. Gosh, that's one of the largest and most important things that a divorce attorney is going to do. But they will educate you without condescension. They will understand that this may be brand new to you, even though we have said it 1,000 times. And most importantly, they explain strategy clearly. They don't just tell you, well, this is how it's done. They explain to you what the strategy is and why it's important and how it will be executed. So here are some essential questions that you may want to consider asking an attorney in that consultation. First off, how do you approach cases like mine? Now, most attorneys, before you go in for that initial consult, are either going to send you a form where you can give them some of the facts of your case so they'll know what stands out or what the facts of your case are, or they're going to give you an opportunity to share some of that information. So an appropriate question to them, because not every divorce is the same. Not every divorce has the same issues. So how do you approach cases like mine? Right? How are you going to deal with my case? Next one, what is your philosophy about settlement? Most attorneys are going to, again, recognize that settlement does not mean losing. Settlement means getting for their client as much of what the client would like to have, needs, works best for them, while giving up as little as possible. It's a balancing act. But settlement is how you move people through divorce with as little conflict, as quickly, with as little cost as possible, so that they can maintain a relationship, which is really important if you're going to continue to co-parent your children. Here's one no one ever asked me when I was meeting with clients, when I was practicing and representing clients. Ask them how they communicate with their client. What that looks like. Do they text? Do they answer quickly? What type of communication might they have after hours or on weekends? That type of thing. Do they prefer emails? Will they get back to you in 24 hours? Is there a staff member that you can communicate with if you can't reach them? How do they charge you for that time? That's another good question. But you want to know how they communicate with clients. You also want to know how often they're going to give you updates. What types of updates should you expect and how often will you get them? Ask them what type of timeline, and here's the key word, is realistic in a case, right? What type of timeline? Now they're going to tell you, they're going to give you the attorney answer. It depends, and it does. It truly does. But get an idea of how they see things playing out. Ask them how they work with financial or parenting professionals, and if they have financial and parenting professionals that they work with routinely, that they can recommend for your case should they be needed. And ask them in this moment, if you're in the early days of the divorce, what should I do to prepare financially right now? Are there things that I could be doing to help me with financials in this moment? So remember, these are all early consultation type questions, but these are really important. If you need to, rewind and go ahead and write these down again. How do you approach cases like mine? What is your philosophy about settlement? How do you communicate with clients? What updates should I expect? What timeline is realistic? How do you work with financial or parenting professionals? And what should I do to prepare financially? The best answer, the best lawyers answer with honesty and clarity, not bravado. All right. Watch out for the attorney who pats themselves on the back quite a bit. And pay attention to their reactions. Because a good and a strong, a confident attorney will handle questions calmly. Even if you're asking them questions that might be a little difficult. Defensiveness from the attorney is a bit of a warning sign. I also highly recommend avoiding fear-based promises. I have had clients come in who have told me that they have heard from that first attorney they hired, I guarantee you will win, or things like your ex does not stand a chance. And while that may feel comforting in the moment, that's a red flag, frankly. It's a red flag. No one controls the court. No one controls your ex. No one controls the attorney that they hire. You have no control over all of those things. There are no guarantees in divorce, certainly not in a divorce courtroom. The only guarantees are those you can negotiate. So guaranteeing you will win, I don't even know how someone decides what a win in a divorce is. The other thing is you are smarter than you think you are, even though you are in the midst of this very emotional time. I want you to trust your internal response. If you feel talked down to, or God forbid, pressured, somebody who wants you to sign a retainer agreement and leave them a check or send them over money, give them a credit card right in that moment, that's your answer. Right? That should be telling you something about whether that attorney is the right attorney for you. If you walk out of a consultation and you feel informed, steady, respected, then you've likely found a good fit. Now, let's move past this into when you're feeling perhaps like your lawyer might not be the right fit for you. This is after the relationship begins. I want you to be on the lookout for these signals. First one, you leave conversations more confused than when you arrive. This is a really common one. You go in or you have a conversation with your attorney or you get an email and you really have no idea what they are talking about. It didn't clarify things for you. You didn't understand, or you don't have any better understanding. Your lawyer should be a translator for you, not the source of confusion. And you shouldn't have to be chasing them down for an understanding of what's happening. So if you're leaving those conversations more confused, red flag, they might not be a good fit for you. If there's no clear strategy, right? If your attorney is just following along with some mysterious plan that they seem to know, but you don't, then there's no clear strategy. You should always know what the next steps are, why decisions are being made. In fact, you should be making those decisions if they are about the content and how your divorce is actually moving forward. Right? So you should always know what the next steps are. If there's no clear strategy, that's another red flag. The next one is when communication is inconsistent. Big red flag, because silence from your attorney is going to create panic in you. It just is. Right? You haven't heard from them. You don't know what they're doing, but you get bills and the fees are going up. So you know something's going on, but no one's telling you what that is. That is a major red flag. Silence creates panic. Reasonable communication is essential with your attorney. And if you are not getting that, at the very least, you should request weekly updates, bi-weekly updates, even if something seems to not be going on. But very important, communication is really one of the big keys. Next red flag is when your questions or concerns are dismissed. Right? Respect from your attorney is not optional. They work for you. They work for you. There is, in some ways, a weird dynamic where many people put their attorney up on a pedestal and expect them to be the high point in this attorney-client relationship. The client is the client. The attorney is the employee. Respect is not optional. And when your attorney, here's another, I just think is so important. And this is the one when you hire the barracuda out of the starting gate, this is the one you're going to start to notice. When your lawyer escalates conflict unnecessarily, right? They file a motion without ever calling the other attorney to see if something could be worked out. They are unusually bombastic in court hearings. Conflict is not a strategy. For many attorneys, not all, but for some attorneys, it's a habit to just file the motion, to just get back into court. Also, sidebar here, it can run up fees as well because court costs a lot more money than just picking up the phone and making a phone call. But when your lawyer is escalating conflict in your case and it's unnecessary, then I want you to recognize that for the red flag it is. And finally, when your values and goals are being ignored by your attorney, that is a major red flag. Your case should reflect the future you are trying to build. Only you know where you want to go in your beyond. And you may not have a clear picture of that, but it's your values and goals that are going to guide you into that future. So they should guide the strategy. They should guide your case. And I've had so many, situations that have come up over the years. The one that pops into my mind immediately is one of my clients who was getting divorced, and his wife in that particular case had an attorney that was very focused on keeping the house. And I had known this attorney for a very, very long time. The house was an issue in every single divorce that she had ever been a part of, or that I had ever been on the other side of. And, we spent, I think, 2 years trying to negotiate this divorce, but this desire to keep the house was really the stumbling block because unfortunately it was a very expensive house. And between the two parents, the funds just didn't exist to maintain that residence after the divorce was finalized. It just, as a practical fact, didn't work. You can't wave a magic wand and make money appear in a divorce. We wouldn't have the divorce problem we have if we could do that. But this attorney was really known for fighting for the house. And I think that was one of the reasons why mom had hired her. But the problem was, as we got 2 years into it, we were very close to trial. We just had not been able to settle it. And in the end, the client, the wife, determined she figured it out on her own, or she got some financial help, but she figured out even if she argued for it and got it in court, she wasn't going to be able to afford it post-dissolution. And at the last minute, we were able to negotiate something, but I will say a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of conflict that wasn't necessary happened because of that. So that's a case where the client's values and goals were not leading that case. It was the attorney and what she was known for. Okay. So those are the red flags I want you to be thinking of. So when you're sitting down thinking, I'm going to send Susan an email and ask whether I should let my attorney go, know that those are the things I would ask you or I would run through with a client. Those are your red flags. And as I'm doing this episode, I'm thinking, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull all of what we've talked about here together into a handout, and you can download that in the show notes, guys, right? So you don't have to take notes, but there's so much good stuff in here. I want to make sure that you have it all in writing. So go to the show notes after you listen to the rest of the episode and click the link to download all of the tips that are in here about the questions you should ask, etc. Right, next section. When your lawyer's not actually the problem. All right. So here are some things your client or your attorney really doesn't have a lot of control over, because some frustrations that you may be having are actually structural in the divorce process that your attorney does not have control over. First one, courts have long delays. Your attorney has no control in most cases over what is happening in court, how things get scheduled, how long you sit there waiting for court time, how long it takes the other side, how the judge rules. All of those things are very much outside your attorney's control. The other aspect is when your attorney is perfectly reasonable, but your ex's attorney, the opposing counsel, isn't so reasonable. And that's an unfortunate reality of the divorce process, is you have control over You have control over who you hire, but you have no control over who your ex hires. And so sometimes it's their counsel inflaming the conflict. It's also sometimes that your ex is the one creating the chaos. A lot of times it's your ex who's creating the chaos, but realize your attorney doesn't have control over your ex any more than you did or do, right? There may be other situations because of the nature of your case where parenting evaluators or financial experts are involved, and maybe some of the conflict or the issues are coming from there. We don't know. You don't know always that your attorney has the control over that. And sometimes, and this can be so hard to accept or understand, but it is a reality of divorce, that sometimes the law does not support the outcome you want. It may not be fair. It's one of the reasons why we call fair the F word of divorce, because what is fair? But sometimes the law doesn't support what you want. And a good attorney cannot control the entire ecosystem of divorce. A great attorney cannot control the entire ecosystem of divorce. The best attorney can't do it. They can only guide you through it. So this is something I want you to be very aware of if you are frustrated with your attorney. So it's like when the waitress brings you a poorly cooked meal, like your steak is underdone or the mashed potatoes are cold. The reality is your waitress or waiter did not cook that food. They didn't have anything to do with it other than to take the order in, to pick it up and bring it to you. And so the fact that the food isn't good isn't something you should take out on the person who served it to you. It's something that is a fault of the system behind the swinging doors in the restaurant, right? Same thing here. So when you feel something is off with your lawyer, here's how you should talk to them. So before you make any significant decision about letting them go or anything about firing them, I always have suggested a reset conversation. You call them up, if they work for you, you ask for a meeting and you try a reset conversation. You can call it that. Let them know this is an important conversation because it's going to define how this relationship goes forward. Here's what you should do in that reset conversation. First off, ask for some clarity. Say something like, can you walk me through what's happened so far and what comes next? Right? Where have we been? What has happened up to now in your words, Mr. or Ms. Attorney? And where are we going from here? Give me some clarity. Share with the attorney the emotional impact of what has happened so far. You can say something like, I feel anxious because I don't understand what progress is being made. In fact, it feels like no progress is being made. That really feels upsetting to me, and I feel very nervous and anxious because of this. So tell them how you are feeling, and then ask for what would make it better. Usually, at the very least, this would be a better communication plan. Can we schedule brief, regular check-ins so that I stay informed? Can we have weekly half-hour calls or 15-minute calls or whatever that feels like it needs, but keeping that open flow of communication. But think about what would make you feel better in this relationship with the attorney if you're having a reset conversation. Give them the parameters of what would help the reset, all right? A good lawyer will respond well to this conversation, and how they respond tells you everything about how to move forward. And here's how you're going to know if it is time to move on. I think it's time for a change when you raise concerns, but nothing improves, right? When nothing changes, when you ask for that reset, yet 2 months down the road, those check-ins aren't happening, you still don't understand what's going on. When you find you're questioning your attorney's judgment, when you don't trust their judgment anymore, when they tell you something and you're wondering if that's true, right? If you don't trust your attorney's judgment, you need one. You need an attorney that you can trust. If you feel dismissed or demeaned by your attorney, that's a no-go. If your goals are not respected, now again, remember your goals, if they are not supported by the law and that's what your attorney's telling you, that's not lacking respect for your goals. It's your attorney giving you information that you need to have because that's their job. I've always told clients one of the hardest parts of our job is that we're there to give you advice and information. The problem is a lot of the time it's not advice or information you actually want to hear. But our job is not to blow that happy smoke up your skirt, right? We have to tell you the truth about what you're dealing with. So understand it's not when your goals are not attained, because that's not always possible, but if they are not respected. If those communication issues continue, if you feel dread every time you have to have interaction with your own attorney, I hear this one from people too, and that in and of itself, right? If you feel like you don't want to answer that task, so you see your attorney's name on the inbox, that's not an email you want to open up, then that's probably not the attorney for you. And if you feel alone in your own case, if you feel like you're in this battle alone, even though you're writing checks to an attorney to be helping you. So ultimately, it's like any relationship. Once the trust is gone, most often the attorney-client relationship cannot be repaired. And here's how you fire your attorney the right way. Realize that this does not need to be dramatic. This is not, the worst thing that is ever going to happen to you or your attorney, as I said to you all. I have been fired a few times in my many years in practice, and I didn't take it as an insult or an indication that I wasn't doing things that were right for the case. It was that they weren't right for that particular client, or I wasn't right for that particular client. You have the right to have the right attorney. So it does not have to be dramatic. Put your decision in writing. A short professional notice to your attorney is more than enough. Terminating the relationship. I thank you for your help up to this point in time. However, I've decided to go in another direction, and I would like to terminate the attorney-client relationship at this time. Right? That's enough. But what you should let them know, if you know, is who is going to be taking over the file. So if you know which attorney you are now going to transfer your case to, I would notify them of that in the written note, email, letter, however you're sending this, carrier pigeon. Usually it's an email these days, and I suggest an email. Request your full file from the attorney. You are legally entitled to your file. Now, that is not to say that some states do not allow attorneys to put a lien on that file for any fees you might owe them. Some states allow that, other states don't. But you're entitled to your file, and you can ask that it be transferred to your new attorney. Your new attorney can also reach out to your old attorney to effectuate that transfer. You do have to clarify outstanding balances with your former attorney. You need to understand what you owe and what remains in your retainer. If anything remains in the retainer, you can ask that it be returned to you, or you can transfer that to your new attorney. If you owe them the original attorney money under your retainer agreement with them, those are likely funds that you are going to need to pay to them. So understand that firing them does not mean that you don't pay them. File any required paperwork. So in the jurisdiction that you are in, most jurisdictions require some sort of filing with the court that tells the court who your legal representative is. So the attorney who's been representing you has probably filed that, and your new attorney will need to file in lieu of, or in their place, or in their stead. And that's usually a form. In the states I practice in, it's called an appearance form. Most states have them. You can Google online. If you're firing your attorney and you are not hiring another attorney, then you need to file an appearance likely in your own name that you're going to represent yourself so that you start getting your court notices and anything that's important from the court, and that the other attorney, your opposing counsel, knows where to send things, or they're going to keep sending it to the attorney on file who no longer works for you. And then, honestly, keep it brief. You do not need to justify your decision. You are allowed to make a change. You don't have to explain why. You can sit firm in the decision, especially if you have followed the process that we've talked about here. This is a very complete process, allowing you to make the best decision for your case, right? So last thing I want to say to you is there are some things that you can do to build trust with the attorney that you choose, because you don't often walk in and have an immediately fabulous relationship with your attorney. It's like any relationship, right? It takes a little time to build it, but you can build a strong attorney-client relationship over time. And here's what I think clients need to do, right? Here's what I would tell you to do to try to build that. This is your part of building that relationship. When you need clarity on something, ask questions. Send that quick email. Ask for what you need to know and expect a response. And if you don't get it, follow up. Ground your expectation in the law, in what is actually possible to attain. We spend a lot of time as attorneys explaining to people why what they think is fair or what they think they're entitled to is not a reasonable expectation. That's not our decision as attorneys. That is the law, and we are giving you information that you need. So when you are setting your expectations for how your divorce is going to run its way out, ground your expectations in the law. Look at progress, not perfection. There is nobody who's perfect. There is no perfect case. There's always an argument to be made on the other side. So look at progress, not perfection. Understand that there's a difference between a case moving slowly and a case that basically your attorney has abandoned. Again, a lot of the time, the attorney has no control over the court scheduling, over how things proceed in court. So your case may be moving more slowly than you want it to. That does not mean it has been abandoned. Always keep your lines of communication open. And remember, discomfort is a part of the process of divorce. This is not something your attorney can remove for you. But over time, as trust builds with your attorney, your process will stabilize and you and your attorney will become a team. And I've talked in other episodes about the other team members, but really one of the highest level needs to have the best outcome possible for your divorce is a high functioning team. You and your attorney are two of the strongest legs of the stool that are a good team. The other two, I've always said, are a good coach and a good financial advisor. So there you have it, guys. I think that that's a pretty complete rundown of how to hire, how to fire, and how to make sure you have the right attorney for your case. Remember, your attorney is not simply a service provider. They are one of the most important people you will work with during this chapter of your life. And you deserve someone who listens, explains, strategizes, and respects the future you are trying to build. You also deserve to feel empowered enough to speak up, ask questions, and make changes when you need to. When you understand how to hire the right attorney, how to recognize a misalignment, and how to build trust with the professional who's going to actually guide you forward, the entire divorce process and experience becomes more manageable. Thank you all for spending this time with me. If you want more support, visit the website divorceandbeyondpod.com, where we have nearly 400 episodes waiting to help you. You'll find guidance on parenting, finances, emotional resilience, legal strategy, and so much more. And remember, you are moving forward. You are moving through. And there is a future waiting for you beyond this moment.
Thank you for joining me today on the Divorce and Beyond podcast. I hope you found some information and inspiration to help you on this journey. Please join me every Monday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for a new episode. And if you like the show, please take the time to subscribe and leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. You can also find more information on the website at divorceandbeyondpod.com, where you'll find links to the YouTube channel, transcripts of the episodes, and other bonus content. So I'll see you next week to help you move through your divorce and beyond. Thank you for joining me today on the Divorce and Beyond podcast. I hope you found some information and inspiration to help you on this journey. Please join me every Monday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for a new episode. And if you like the show, please take the time to subscribe and leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. You can also find more information on the website at divorceandbeyondpod.com, where you'll find links to the YouTube channel, transcripts of the episodes, and other bonus content. So I'll see you next week to help you move through your divorce and beyond.